outrage over the story of Karmelo Anthony, who stabbed and killed Austin Metcalf. And this has resulted in a massive cultural shift, divide, however you want to describe it. On Give, Send, Go, there are two fundraisers, one for the family of Metcalf and one for the accused, Karmelo Anthony. On the right, people are saying this is clear-cut murder. And it's disgusting that he's been able to raise any money. And there are calls for Give, Send, Go to shut down his fundraiser, which I find personally wrong. Now, Give, Send, Go has stated they're not going to take it down because they're the only platform that actually allows people to raise money for what they say, for free speech, for these issues. And sooner or later, someone on the right's going to be accused as well. I think it's particularly interesting that people would come after Give, Send, Go in this regard because we know what Give, Send, Go does. They allow people to fundraise and they don't play games. In this story, I have for you the police report as I have read it. And this story is not so easy. Now, people on the right are dead set on Karmelo Anthony is guilty and he's wrong. And they break down why. I have a tweet from Jack Posobiec and Austin Peterson, and this is his article, breaking down the massive cultural divide. For the life of me, I can't really, I should say, surface level, explain to you why people are so angry about this, but I do think there are a few opinions. One is that people are angry that this dude wasn't supposed to have a knife, and he stabbed and killed a dude. And it's a horrifying story. Austin Metcalf's brother held him as he bled out after being stabbed in the heart. It's terrifying. There's a racial component. One of the first tweets I saw from this story was, if this narrative had been inverted, it would be all over the news. And thus, people on the right were sharing it, saying, absolutely. If it was a story of a white kid who stabbed a black kid in the heart, there'd be BLM riots. It'd be George Floyd 2.0. So the people on the right are saying this is our cause because we're sick of the DI nonsense. Me, I'm more concerned about the implications, the facts of the case, and I have the police report to read to you. Because the facts of the case, as I've described it, are, at least as we know from the police report, correct. So I read this police report and I say, interesting. The implications here are very, very interesting. The questions. I'll give you the simple version of the story. There's two high schools, rivals. Karmelo Anthony is sitting under a tent for the rival school. Austin Metcalf, his brother, and several others approach the tent and tell him he can't be there. Karmelo Anthony says he's not going to leave. They exchange words. He says they tell him he's not supposed to be there. He says he grabs his bag, reaches into it and says, touch me and find out what happens. According to police, Austin Metcalf grabbed him, and that's when Karmelo stabbed him once in the chest before fleeing. He was later apprehended by police. Some argue he turned himself in, but I'll read the police report to you. And he said, it's not an allegation. He did it. And he asked if it could be considered self-defense. Now, people on the right have argued, you can't bring a knife to a knife-free zone. You can't bring knives to school. I say, okay. Then if the argument is you believe he premeditated the murder, totally get it. If the argument is on face value, as for the police report, some kid put his hands on him, you got some deep self-defense questions at play. Now, this one's extremely tribal, and I got people saying, I'm going to unsubscribe from you, Tim. Okay, dude, whatever, man. You want me to read the police report? You make up your own mind, but I'm going to tell you what I think. And there is no reality where I say my right to keep and bear arms is subject to your vote. But there's questions here. So here's a story from Human Events. Let's read this first. They say, Austin Peterson writes, if you stab a high school football player through the chest in front of his twin brother, the public response is $250,000 and a round of applause. That's how much Karmelo Anthony, the 17-year-old accused of murdering Austin Metcalf at a Texas track meet, has raised through online donations. Not for the victim's family, but for his legal defense. With every dollar, America proves something ugly. We are no longer a nation that condemns brutality. We sponsor it. The details aren't murky. Witnesses say Metcalf asked Anthony to leave his team's tent. Anthony responded by reaching into his bag and warning, touch me and see what happens. When Metcalf stood up and pushed him, Anthony pulled out a knife and drove it into Metcalf's chest. He fled the scene as Austin collapsed, bleeding out in his brother's arms. Later, when confronted by police, Anthony didn't deny it. I did it, he said. This wasn't self-defense. It wasn't a scuffle gone wrong. It was a boy bringing a weapon to a school event, threatening to use it, and then doing precisely that. But the story didn't end there. It metastasized. Within hours of the stabbing, conspiracy theories began flooding on social media. Fake accounts of impersonating officials claimed Austin was a drug addict, that he died from an overdose, that he'd been bullying Karmelo for months. None of it was true. Beware of those taking the social media to spread misinformation, hate, fear, and division deliberately, warned Frisco Police Chief David Shilson. But it was too late. The falsehoods had already done their work. The killer had lawyers. He had a fundraiser. He had a movement. What he didn't have, what Austin no longer had, was a future. Austin's father, Jeff Metcalf, said he'd forgiven the boy who'd killed his son. God's going to take care of me. God's going to take care of my family, he told NBC. It's a powerful expression of faith, but personal forgiveness doesn't mean justice has been served. It doesn't mean society should follow suit with open wallets. Forgiveness, when chosen freely, can be noble. But when society transforms that personal act into a moral shield for the killer, it becomes something else entirely. Nobody's been convicted. There has been no presentation of evidence. We literally have a story. Someone died. We have witness accounts, and now we want it to be adjudicated. That's where I'm at. Yet there are people like Austin who are saying outright, no, he did it. It's a fact. It's amazing to come from a libertarian, I guess. Now, by all means, I don't think Karmelo Anthony was right in any regard, but there are deeper questions here as to court precedent and what it means for you in self-defense, which is why I'm not going to come out right away and say, quick, burn the Constitution. Oh no, a family's crying. Quick, burn the Constitution. Not going to happen. I ain't doing it. I got the police report for you. Right? Here we go. Public information, mind you. All of this is publicly available. Karmelo Anthony is 5'9". He weighs 130 pounds. He's 17 years old, from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Been charged with first-degree murder. Now, I'm going to tell you this, my friends. I think he gets off. I think he will beat these charges. First-degree murder means he went there with the intent to kill. They're not going to prove that. The same thing happened with Kyle Rittenhouse. Even people on the left are like, guys, he's being overcharged. They're not going to get him on this. You can argue second-degree passion murder. That is, Karmelo should not have had a weapon. When the altercation started, he then, in that moment, decided to kill Austin Metcalf. I think that's an argument you might be able to get from a jury. They're not going to get first-degree murder. Going to the jury and saying, we believe that he showed up with the intent to kill this guy. They're going to say, they don't know each other. How could he have? What's the evidence that he was like, I'm going to go kill a guy? Likely not going to happen. Plus, considering what he said to the police, I doubt he had the clarity of mind to make these statements to make it look like he was innocent. So here we go. We got the initial narrative. Here's the police report. Get the facts, my friends, and make up your own mind. So this is Eduardo Cortez, and I believe there's Allison Ricci and Will Otis. There's Officer Taylor Wetzel, Jerry Hancock, Alvin Fisher, Mike Crawford, Jacob Schultz. These are all the officers. There's many. Kyle Pemberton, Justin Newton, all on the official report. Now, each of these are, different perspectives of the incident. So here we go. Let me read Kyle Pemberton. He says at approximately 10:04 hours, I, Pemberton, responded to Frisco Stadium, Texas, in response to a reported stabbing. The location of the stadium. Call notes advised a male had been stabbed and was unconscious. Upon arrival, several officers and medical personnel were attending to the victim, who was laying on the ground of the stadium bleachers. I coordinated the Frisco PD response, trying to establish a crime scene. The knife reported to have been used in the assault was located by another officer in the bleachers. Shortly after my arrival, a large downpour of rain began. I directed several officers to use a tarp found at the scene to cover the location of the knife. I remained on scene until the victim was transported and the crime scene was established. They go on to mention, here's another story. This is Jacob Schultz. Upon my arrival, I tried to get an updated location of the suspect. I could not see Officer Cortez when I arrived. Officer Cortez informed me over the radio that he had a suspect in custody. At this time, I turned my attention to the victim. Multiple FISD trainers were already performing CPR. I could see blood on and around the victim. At this time, medics arrived and began life-saving measures. I coordinated with other officers on scene to secure the location. By this time, the students and FISD staff had cleared the area. I used crime scene tape and began to tape off the area. It began to rain harder. I'm going to skip over a little bit of this. The students quickly informed me that he knew where the suspect threw the knife and pointed me to its location. I located the knife. I quickly used my city-issued phone to take pictures before the rain could wash the blood away. Sergeant Otis located a tarp. This we already went through. It was later discovered that the backpack I threw up onto the tarp was the suspect's backpack. It was the only Centennial High School backpack located within the Memorial High School backpacks in the area. After securing the scene with the crime scene tape and attempting to preserve as much evidence as possible, I assisted other officers with locating the possible witness. Officer Wetzel was maintaining scene security while I was assisting the other officers. After the medics transported the victim, I relieved him of that post so he could go back to patrol and maintain the scene security until the call was cleared. Photos will be updated, et cetera, et cetera. Many of these officers did not take witness statements, and they're only explaining what they did upon arrival. I will jump down to a few of these statements that I believe to be important to this case pertaining to the officer who was there, which I believe was Cortez. So let me find Officer Cortez, who was with the suspect in question, Karmelo Anthony. There's Will Otis, Richie Allison, and Eduardo Cortez. He says that he arrived. As he entered the stadium, 2 high school students informed me the victim was in the north end of the stadium. I'm gonna try and cut through as much as I can. I don't want to leave out anything that's important, but it is long. He says the individual that was pointed out to me was a black male wearing a gray hooded sweatshirt and dark colored Nike pants. The suspect at this point was on the track at the north end. There was a chain link fence that separated me from the suspect. I gave the suspect instructions to keep his hands in the air. During this time, the suspect verbally out loud said, "I was protecting myself." It should be noted that I had not questioned him about the incident when he made that comment. I asked him if he had any weapons and he said no. I patted him down for weapons while we were walking along the fence. I did not locate any on his person. I instructed the male to continue walking along the fence, which he complied toward an area where there was an opening in the fence that led off to the track. While walking him off the track, the suspect also said he put his hands on me. I then detained the suspect in handcuffs and cuffed behind his back and had him sit down on the ground. Officer A. Ritchie arrived on the scene at the time. I conducted another pat down to the person and searched the person after he gave me consent. No weapons were located. When the suspect sat on the ground, I advised that I had the alleged suspect. The suspect then responded saying, "I'm not alleged, I did it." Officer Ritchie and I walked the suspect to patrol vehicle 2412, Officer Ritchie's vehicle, which at the north end of the gate of Curry Kendall Stadium. And we were walking to the squad car. The suspect was emotional and said, "He put his hands on me. I told him not to." I did not question the suspect about the incident while he was escorted to the patrol vehicle. I searched this person once again and had him sit in the back seat area, driver's side of the patrol vehicle. While the suspect was in the back seat, I noticed fresh blood on his middle finger. I verbally acknowledged that I saw the blood out loud so that it could be captured on my body-worn camera. It should be noted that the suspect asked me, "Is he going to be okay?" while in the back seat. This is on body camera, and this is a statement from the police officer. I then identified the suspect. He provided his name and date of birth verbally as Karmelo Anthony with a date of birth, which they blocked out. I ran through FPD dispatch. Officer Jay Hancock arrived on scene and remained with me and the suspect at this point. Karmelo was then checked into the eSchool database to confirm his identity. The identifying information he provided matched the individual I had in custody. Next, I was advised by Sergeant Holland to transport the suspect to Frisco PD jail. Officer Hancock and I transported him to the jail. Again, I did not question him about the incident. Upon arriving at the Frisco jail, Karmelo was escorted to in the intake area. FPD jail staff changed him out into jail attire and remained with the jail staff the entire time that he was changed over. The clothes that Karmelo was wearing was placed in an FPD evidence bag. The clothes remained in my possession. I returned to my patrol car. I drove out to Sally Port and parked the squad car at FPG parking area. Karmelo's clothes remained in the trunk of the vehicle. And that's basically, I added my body-worn camera to the case. I have no further information. This is the officer who apprehended Karmelo Anthony. And I think the important quotes are, the first thing he says, "I was protecting myself." He put his hands on me. He then said, what was the next thing? "I'm not alleged, I did it." He says, he put his hands on me. I told him not to. These are going to be important in determining whether this was first-degree murder, which is why I think it is unlikely they're going to succeed in first-degree murder. Because witnesses also confirmed he was either pushed, touched, or grabbed, as Austin Peterson mentioned in his article. So we have this from Richie Allison, who also arrived, and she said, he did say, I'm not alleged, I did it. Officer Cortez and I walked to the car. While walking patrol vehicle, Anthony made another spontaneous statement and asked what happened could be considered self-defense. These are 2 officers now saying this. I replied by telling Anthony I did not know what happened. It should be noted in my car camera patrol vehicle was activated prior to him being placed in the vehicle. While Officer Cortez assisted Anthony in the vehicle, I noticed Anthony had blood on his left middle finger. I grabbed my department-issued digital camera and took a photograph of his hands. I later updated sent the photo in. Now, the next important part is the statement from the officers who actually got the witness statements from the other high school students. With, I believe, it may have been Wetzel Taylor. Witnesses stated. Yeah, okay. So this is Taylor Wetzel, an officer. So he says that he arrived at 10:02 hours, responding to a report. When I arrived on scene, I grabbed a roll of crime scene tape from my trunk and proceeded to the visitors' bleachers where dispatch advised the victim was. While I was walking towards the visitors' bleachers, I was approached by a witness who identified himself as blank. It's redacted. Redacted began telling me what happened. I asked him where the stabbing occurred. A redacted advised it happened under the Memorial High School pop-up tent in the visitors' bleachers. I immediately informed Sergeant Otis where the witness stated the stabbing occurred and gave him the crime scene tape, start securing the crime scene. I then had redacted move to the walkway into the visitors' bleachers out of the rain to further speak with me. The following is a summary of my contact with redacted. I'm saying redacted, it's a black bar. Advised he was sitting under the Memorial High School tent. The victim, Austin, and the suspect, who was later identified as Karmelo Anthony. Anthony was from Centennial High School and was sitting under the Memorial High School tent. Austin had told Anthony that he needed to move out from under their team's tent, and Anthony grabbed his bag, opened it, reached inside, and proceeded to tell Austin, touch me and see what happens. No one really thought Anthony really had any weapons in his bag, and Austin proceeded to touch Anthony, and then Anthony told Austin to punch him and see what happens. A short time later, Austin grabbed Anthony to tell him to move, and Anthony pulled out what redacted recalled as a black knife and stabbed Austin once in the chest and then ran away. Austin began grabbing his chest, telling everyone to get help. Redacted advised he did not know Anthony's name, but stated another Memorial Trek member, another redacted individual, was friends with Anthony and could identify Anthony. Redacted described Anthony as a black male, skinny with possibly a goatee, short puffy hair, and wearing Centennial High School clothing. This concluded my contact with Redacted. I then was instructed to start a crime scene log. I retrieved a crime scene log from my patrol vehicle and began starting the crime scene log. Again, this should be on body camera, I believe. I do believe we have another witness statement, which I will read for you guys. I know this goes a little long, but this is relevant to the story. He says the crime scene was already marked off. I began asking people. I made contact with Hunter, redacted, and then another redacted individual. Both were breathing heavily and crying. They were with coaches on the field in the pouring rain. We made the decision to relocate to a locker room. Once things were in there, they calmed a bit. However, they were still hysterical and could not really talk. I learned Hunter was the brother of the victim. I attempted to ask them both what had happened. I could not really get anything out of Hunter, but Redacted stated he wanted to speak. I asked him what happened, and he stated they were all sitting on the bleachers under Memorial High School tent when another male who he did not know walked over and sat under the tent. Then, mind you, perhaps motivation was it was about to rain. Then said Austin, the victim told this male that since he did not go to Memorial, he had to leave his tent. Austin said the male went back and forth, and then Austin stood up and pushed the male to get him out of the tent. Redacted said that during this time arguing, the male was reaching around his bag he had. It was this time the male took out a knife and stabbed Austin and then left the scene. This was all Redacted remembered when he talked to me. After this, I then stood by with 3 athlete witnesses until CID arrived and interviewed them. I was relieved by an SRO and went back to patrol. So you've got numerous witness statements, a horrifying story, mind you. I feel for this family. I mean, it's terrible. The important thing that I'm going to break down on this, it's fascinating to me that even a libertarian would take such a strong approach. Here's the problems we have. We don't know exactly what went down right now. The body camera footage will help. We have some witness statements, but these are just witness statements. It sounds like Karmelo escalated this and did not need to, but I don't think you're going to get first degree murder, potentially second, maybe even manslaughter. Now, if the law is that you can't have a knife on school grounds, he might get first degree murder for this. That could be the extenuating circumstance, for which I disagree. I don't live in a world where you can vote away our right to keep and bear arms and defend ourselves. And I believe that keeping and bearing arms includes knives. I do. Now, Jack Posobiec says there is currently no evidence Karmelo Anthony acted in self-defense. Also, a crowd of people witnessed what he did, and none of them gave conflicting statements that present any scenario other than a shock stabbing. Videos, photos, anything. I don't think Karmelo's some innocent kid who did nothing. Here's what I think. It was raining. It was downpour. Likely clouds were over the field and rain was coming. This would explain why Karmelo Anthony went to the tent to sit down. According to the witnesses, he went there while the Memorial High School students were already there. Karmelo went and sat down, and these guys said, you can't be here. There was an altercation, which resulted in either a shoving, a touching, or a grabbing. These things matter. If Austin Metcalf simply put his hand on his shoulder and says, bro, you got to go, and then got stabbed, murder. Probably second degree. With the, I would say the extenuating circumstance of a weapon-free zone being a school, you can probably get to first-degree murder. If it was that, Austin Metcalf was with a group of guys, and he shoved him, and then he said, touch me and find out what happens, and the guy grabbed him, you literally have a self-defense claim. Now, you can still argue manslaughter in that regard, that you don't stab a guy for grabbing you. But this is going to play at self-defense in a ton of circumstances, especially in Texas. It is not, okay, this is not a statement on Karmelo Anthony. I'm going to say this generally speaking. It is not my responsibility nor your responsibility to determine the extent of force a person is willing to use when they make contact with you. Okay? That is some blue state garbage. If I am standing my ground in a stand your ground state and someone touches me, I believe you are the person who was assaulted. They grabbed you with force, with intent. I do not believe it is responsibility of that person to then determine whether or not they are facing serious bodily harm or death. Do not grab and attack people. The problem with this story, Karmelo Anthony escalated it to an extreme degree, and that is going to play here. So he's likely going to get something, but I think they may be overcharging him. I reject wholeheartedly, especially from these libertarians, that a school says you're not allowed to have weapons. Oh, spare me. Did the dude grab a steak knife from the cafeteria? Did he have a combat blade? Did he have a switchblade? Was it a utility knife? These things matter. But the whole argument about gun-free zones, ridiculous. My right to self-defense and use of any means to do so if I feel that I'm being threatened does not end because you voted I have no right to defend myself. I am not saying Karmelo Anthony did. I'm saying these schools that are gun-free zones, they're only allowing criminals and perpetrators to do their deed. And this case, if that were the case, it's further evidence. This was a weapon-free zone. How did Karmelo Anthony have a weapon there? Now the right is arguing he violated a weapon-free zone. I am playing that game. The argument here is, did he actually perceive a threat? You're going to get a jury. The jury is going to say, first-degree murder, he intended to kill somebody. They're going to say, no. It was about the thunderstorm. Police say so. He went to sit under the tent because he wanted to stay dry. The other students tried pushing him off. He didn't want to get wet. A physical altercation ensued, and he drew a knife and used it. The question that's going to arise in court is, did he have a legal right to do so? Well, I tell you this, the liberals are going to say, nope, it's a weapon-free zone. Karmelo's going to get in trouble. But if this were, look, the people that are coming out outright and just saying he's a stone-cold killer, I mean, Jack, I disagree. There's no evidence he acted in self-defense. I mean, I don't say it's strong evidence, but they're going to make this argument. The defense will say it's a cloudy day with thunder clouds, storm clouds above. Forecast calls for rain. You're outside in a field. Rain is coming. A young man by himself walks and sits under a tent when a group of other boys tell him to get out. Tell him that he's got to leave. And then we've got either he was touched, which I can disregard. Touching someone is nothing. Someone could be freaked out by it, but he was grabbed or shoved by an individual who was with a larger group of kids. And that's not bullying, but the defense will argue Karmelo became terrified. Here he is, surrounded by a bunch of guys he doesn't know, who then initiate a fight with him, and he warns them, touch me and find out what happens. He's telling them to back off. They then proceed to grab him, push him or touch him or otherwise, and so he stabs this kid, and the defense will say it was self-defense. Do you think a jury is going to buy that? Maybe not. They're going to say you don't need to stab somebody. The jury is going to play racial politics in this 100%. They're going to say that he was terrified that these kids were going to beat him up, and he's seen stories. My point on this case has nothing to do with this specific case. It is that conservatives are coming out and saying weapon-free zones. They're saying, we know what happened. It's not in dispute. And I'm like, the left said the same thing of Kyle Rittenhouse. They lied about what happened. They said that he wasn't legally allowed to carry a weapon, therefore it was murder. The arguments flew across the board. So I say, let the courts handle it. And if you're rooting for a conviction, by all means, I hope you get one. But when Kyle Rittenhouse was attacked and defended himself, how was he attacked? He ran away. He heard a gunshot and turned around. And Rosenbaum reached out, swiping the tip of the gun, so Kyle shot him. The argument for the left was he had no right to use lethal force against someone who was simply swiping with no weapons at him. Wrong. Kyle Rittenhouse was found to have acted in self-defense, even though the guy chasing him was unarmed. Kyle had reasonable fear of death because this guy was chasing him and then reached out for him. In fact, Kyle wasn't even touched when he shot Rosenbaum, I think 3 times with a rifle. He was then approached. He was hit by the one guy with the skateboard, and he shot him because he was on the ground. He was actually hit in that regard. The other guy approached him holding a gun, and he shot the guy's arm, vaporizing his bicep. Crazy. But understand the argument they made about Kyle Rittenhouse. There's a bunch of libertarians and pro-gun individuals that are roasting all of these people on the right, saying you never believed in self-defense or the right to bear arms. It's not about whether you think Karmelo Anthony's intent or motive. It's about, are we going to say that the law can ban your right to have a weapon? The law can say you can't carry a knife or otherwise. Are we going to wait for the facts on this case, or are we going to say it's not self-defense if someone grabs you? Okay, then Kyle Rittenhouse didn't act in self-defense. Rosenbaum never grabbed him. I don't play these tribal games, dude. I'm not playing this game. Believe whatever you want to believe, root for what you want. But I just read you the police report, not the entirety of it, but much of their accounts. And those are the facts as stated. I don't think Karmelo Anthony's life was in danger. I believe he acted unreasonably for sure. They are going to make a self-defense argument. And they have what I would describe as a weak self-defense argument, but it's not absent. It's there. They're going to say a young man, 17, 130 pounds, surrounded by a bunch of dudes, and one of them shoves him, and he warns him not to touch him, and the guy grabs him. That's what the jury's going to hear. When they get these other kids on the stand, they're going to say, yes, Austin did grab him, did push him. That's in the police report, and I believe on body camera footage. Not to mention, the first statements made by Karmelo were, I was defending myself. I was protecting myself. And I'll tell you this, the story is absolutely going to change. So currently no evidence. The body camera footage has a statement from Karmelo. His testimony is considered evidence. It is witness testimony. Typically, you don't have the perpetrator testify because it's considered not very credible or incredulous, in which case, by all means, choose to disregard that. But you also have statements from others that he was shoved, touched, or grabbed. Now imagine a scenario like I already mentioned with Kyle Rittenhouse, who wasn't actually touched. And people are saying getting shoved it does not give you the right to use lethal force. Tell Kyle Rittenhouse that, who wasn't even shoved and got off on self-defense. Guys, I'm not playing this game. Do whatever you want. I'll leave it there. Smash the like button or not or whatever. I'm going to wait for the facts on this case. And I don't know exactly how it went down. There's no videos. It is what it is. Believe what you want. You're entitled to it. Follow me on X and Instagram and Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all in the next segment.